This is a topic that I've had to work on my entire life, and it's healing your inner child and diving deep into psychology. If you didn't know, I really like psychology, and so I've studied a lot of psychology throughout my life, mainly because I had to be some sort of practical psychologist to figure out why I was so screwed up. Why did I behave? Why did I behave this way? Why do I like this? Why am I triggered by X, Y, and Z? Inside every adult is just a little child who experienced joy, pain, love, and trauma. Whether you realize it or not, that child is still influencing your decisions, relationships, and that child directly influences your sense of self. Good news is you can heal your inner child, rewrite your story. But before I get into that, I should give you some context as to why this is something that's kind of big with me and why I decided to make this video. So, hey, growing up, it wasn't like we were dead poor. We didn't have a lot of money. I had my father and my mother throughout the course of my adolescence. They ended up getting divorced. And to a degree, I make the argument that having my father around did more damage than having him not around. But I'm grateful and I'm blessed. I mean, my father is a wonderful man, but when you get him angry, he's kind of scary. I mean, he's a great man. And my mother was a hard-working woman who sacrificed her dreams so that mine can live on, which I think is the most powerful thing that a parent can do. It's one of the strongest, it's one of the leading indicators of strength, is to sacrifice for something or someone greater than you. That's honorable to me. And I would speak to my mother a lot of times. And so mind you, my father, like I said, he's a very beautiful human, but when he would get angry, it'd be very scary, not just for me, but for my mother, for the household. Things would break, people would get hurt. It was kind of scary. And it's because he had a lot of built up pain. I can only imagine how difficult it was. And mind you, both my parents are from Vietnam. I was born in Vietnam, came to the States like maybe a month in. I can only imagine how difficult it was for my father to come from Vietnam to the States, bring his entire bloodline. I mean, I'm talking 14 brothers and sisters, and find a way to take care of everybody. He became a handyman. He was really good with his hands. He would tell me in his early stages, in his 20s, he had a lot of money, and somewhere along the lines, he made bad decisions. He had 2 wives, so I have a half-brother. And so he's been married twice. My half-brother's a lot older than me. We didn't grow up together. I grew up the only child. And in moments where I look back on my life and I'm a little bit angry as to why my father behaved that way, I just remind myself that, well, hey, if I was dealt those cards, who's to say I would behave differently? Who's to say that I would be different? I can't make that call. I can only imagine the world of pain he went through. So when I think about it, it's very nice that I can develop empathy for my father. But the truth is, things were hectic with him around, and I understand why. Things were tough. The pain of not being able to take care of your family really strikes at your ego and your pride, especially when your wife is the one going to work, suffering, and you're just home taking care of me, his son. I can only imagine how tough that was for him. I can only imagine the damage that he felt, how much his pride just got attacked. A man is supposed to be the foundation of the home, the rock for a family, the leader for a son, a safe place for the wife, a beacon of hope. And my father couldn't do that. And so just years of anger and failures probably piled up to where he had no choice but just to take it out on whatever was available. So I get it. I'm not saying it was necessarily right. I could think of a lot better things to do with that anger than to take it out on the people that you, quote, love. But I mean, my father was a blessed person. He was a great human. I heard a lot of things growing up, saw a lot of things that have been deeply rooted in me. That is deeply embedded in my mind, and it's rewired and structured my psychology in a way where it directly influenced my behavior. There's a lot of pain. There were always arguments, and it was so much argument to where if it was late at night and I'm on the computer just playing video games, I can listen to the pitch of my father's voice. I can literally listen to it. And if it raised above a certain pitch, I just knew the night wasn't going to end well. And there were moments where if it just remained at a certain pitch, I'm like, tonight's going to be a good night. And I was always spot on because of how often it happened. It happened so often. I was able to predict the outcome of the night based on the tone of my father's voice. So I was blessed, and I've had both parents, and they ended up getting divorced. My father got sick with lymphoma, and that's when they kind of split. He treated my mother poorly, and it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. And I remember having a conversation with my mother. I said, and this was when I was maybe 22. I sat down, I said, well, why didn't you run away? She was like, I was about to. Thompson, because we lived in a small house before this house. We lived in a little small house. And she was like, I came home one night and I just had enough. I'm working hard. I'm driving 4 or 5 hours in dental school, trying to make a living, trying to provide for us. And your father's just thinking I'm doing something else. And who knows? I've asked both of them for their stories and their sides, and nothing really lined up, which really annoyed me. But that's when I kind of gave up on trying to figure it out. I said, well, someone here is lying, which means someone here is willing to look into my eyes and lie straight to my face. Someone here is lying. So I gave up on that. But I remember speaking to my mother, and I said, well, why didn't you just run away? You could just run away. She said, well, yeah, but I did. I packed all my stuff, and I was going to leave back to Vietnam, and I was just going to leave you and your father. I couldn't believe that I sacrificed everything in Vietnam to come here to the States to live a life like this, of punishment, of pain, of mistreatment. And she said, you know what stopped me? I said, what? She said, as I'm walking out the front door with my luggage, here you come. You're like four years old, for crying out loud. And you're like, mommy, mommy, holding your little Spider-Man toy. Where are you going? And she told me in that moment, she collapsed. She fell to her knees and she just balled up in tears. She couldn't control it. And she said, come here, Thompson. And she gave me a hug. And she said, I'm not going nowhere. Mommy's not going nowhere. And she said, from that moment on, she said, I will endure as much pain as I can to make sure that this child grows up better than me. And that's sacrifice. And that's love at its purest form. She sacrificed her dreams so that mine can live on. That's powerful. So to a degree, I guess I have daddy issues. I've always had growing up. I didn't have a strong masculine role model in my life that I respected, nor did I have a role model that I looked up to. It was really hard for me to find anything admirable in my father. It was really, really tough. So what I did was, throughout the course of my young adulthood, when I left at 18 to the military, I looked for that in everyone. It could be a dude that's 2 years older than me, and I would look up to him like, teach me something, please. Right? So I guess I've dealt with some things in my past I didn't really like. Man, I'm blessed. And it shaped me to become this person that I am now, to where I can help anyone watching these videos. So if you've ever felt like you were overreacting to just little things or certain situations just trigger you, you can't explain it. It's your inner child just crying out for healing. Like, it's so much pain. It's reminding your child of this pain, and it's a child, for crying out loud. It's gonna weep, it's gonna cry, it's gonna turn into this emotional wrecking ball. I want to dive into the psychology behind this inner child healing phase and why it matters. Hopefully it can help you reconnect and heal this vulnerable part of yourself that's literally responsible for your entire future. Hopefully you can understand by the end of this video how your past shapes your present, and I want to offer some practical tools to help you start your healing journey, because it's really important. It really helped me. It took a lot of years. So we can start with defining things like I always do. Well, what is your inner child? Your inner child represents the part of you that carries your childhood experiences, emotions, and memories, both good and bad. It's not a literal child, but it's a psychological concept that just embodies your early life, the feelings associated with your early life, beliefs associated with your early life, and just unmet needs that at the time you couldn't really describe, but you needed it. And you can only tell that you needed it in hindsight because at that moment you were just too young to know what you needed or wanted for that matter. You're just a sponge. You're just here, kind of just existing, right? Your inner child, you can think of it as a library, and the books in the library are all the things that you've seen, heard, felt, and you always have access to this library. And when problems occur in your life, the one place you go is the library. You may do this subconsciously or you may do this consciously. It may happen unconsciously, who knows? That would depend on your level of self awareness. But you can think of it as a library of a lot of information, a lot of pain, a lot of knowledge, a lot of things you've seen, that you've heard, that you felt. And it's just stored there. You can't get rid of these books. They're meant to stay in the library. And so when you come into a problem, like you meet somebody, the root is the library. So you go back to the library and you pull from books that you don't even know exist because you haven't read all the books in the library. All you've done is just looked at the library as a whole and you're like, well, there are a lot of books. You haven't opened each one. And so the books are experiences, emotions felt while you were a child. It shapes your life. Your inner child shapes your life. It's where your creativity, your playfulness, and your joy, that's where it comes from. The wounds and the triggers that you have, unresolved childhood pain can manifest as fear, self doubt, emotional reactivity in adulthood, in impulsive decision making. There's some signs to let you know if you need to heal this inner child and this part of you. And it's, well, if you have difficulty trusting others or forming a relationship, feeling unworthy, unseen, rejected, if you struggle with perfectionism to a degree, or you always like pleasing people, reacting disproportionately to criticism or conflict, these are small signs that you can be like, well, there's something lying dormant that's deeply affected by these things, which cues the response. So now that we've understood what the inner child is, and again, it's not an actual child, right? It's a psychological concept. Now we can kind of move forward and talk about the psychology behind healing this psychological concept that we have called the inner child. Childhood experiences, they shape your core beliefs. They're responsible for molding your core beliefs. That's why you see the world through a different lens. I vowed to myself that I would never harm a woman, lay my hands on a woman. I would do everything I can. And I haven't done it in the past. Not saying that I've physically harmed a woman, but I've emotionally really hurt a few good ladies in my life. But I had this promise I wouldn't do it anymore when I came to the realization that I was just this egotistical, narcissistic human who was transactional, and he treated ladies that probably have loved him wrongly. I vowed to myself that when I came to that realization, I would never do that again. And I also, from a young age, I vowed to myself I would never lay hands on a woman. And it's because I've seen that happen throughout the course of my childhood. And so it deeply shaped my beliefs and how I view relationships. As children, we're sponges, absorbing everything around us because we don't know what all this is. We're trying to make sense of all of this. To a degree, the reason why we're always going to be children is because we don't have it all figured out. You'll be 45, still trying to figure everything out. If you experience neglect, criticism, trauma, we internalize those experiences and those beliefs. And we internalize them like this: I'm not good enough, or I'm unlovable. There are two sides of the spectrum. You have the polar opposite and you have the polar negative. There are polar sides to each. Here's a good example. If there's a child who felt ignored That child might grow up seeking constant validation or avoiding relationships out of just fear of rejection. Things that you went through in grade school might deeply change the way you view the world. I had somebody in my life a few years back who told me a story about how this person would get bullied in school. And stepping back and seeing how he carries himself, this person is really, he was adamant on external validation, proving people wrong, proving people that he could do X, Y, and Z, and having people give him the flowers because it makes sense. I mean, at a point in his life, he didn't have that. And so the cue is, since I didn't have that, I need to become something or someone so that I can just receive what I felt was missing my entire adolescence. I wanted people to just cheer me on, root for me, not just destroy me. I want people to uplift me. And he said, well, the only way they're going to uplift me is if I become someone that's worthy of that. A lot of the things that happen to us, they really do shape our core beliefs. And so when we can understand that, we can also move over to triggers. Think of triggers as little clues, bits from your inner child, trying to say, hey, this is a problem. Let's do something. If you get triggered, just consider your inner child saying, we have a problem. That's why we're behaving like this. Let's find a solution now. When something today makes you feel disproportionately hurt, angry, or anxious, it's often because it's touching an unresolved wound from your past. You can heal the wounds, they're never forgotten, right? That's why there are scars. Scars remain on the body for a reason. It's a reminder that, wow, I was able to heal this. I did heal this. And so I'm left with just a memory. It doesn't hurt when I touch it. It's not an open wound. It's just there to remind myself that I went through that. I have that experience. If you feel panicked when someone raises their voice, I mean, it could stem from growing up in a household where yelling was associated with danger, right? I mentioned that when I was a child, the household was very chaotic. One of my forms of escape was drugs and alcohol because at least that way I can fall asleep and I can sleep the whole night without being abruptly awakened by the screaming and the crying and all this stuff. At least I was just high, super drunk. Mind you, I'm like 16. I'm like super high, super drunk. And at least that way I'm snoozing in fairy tale land. Really helped me cope, right? We all have coping mechanisms. That's mine. Hey, don't judge me, you know? There's another concept, and it's reparenting. The concept goes like this. Reparenting kind of means giving yourself the love, care, and guidance that your younger self needed but just didn't receive. Carl Jung, you guys know, one of my favorite psychologists. Carl Jung's a Swiss psychoanalyst who really took Freud's idea of the unconscious and said, no, there's much more than what lays in front of us. There's a mystical and there's a mystical and symbolic meaning of all of these dreams and behaviors. There's patterns, right? If you guys don't know, I'm a big fan of Jung. I mean, I have a bunch of his books right here. Like, I wish I could show you all of them. I have 20 of his uncollected works just here. And again, part of why I still study psychology is because, well, at a young age, I had to become a practical psychologist to really just figure out why I was behaving a certain way. I had to know. I didn't know. I knew nothing. I had no guidance. I'm just lost in the sauce, just zoning out and just floating through the stratosphere, right? So according to Jung, man, he says healing happens when you integrate and nurture your inner child rather than ignoring it or suppressing it. There's this idea that Jung has in this concept called the shadow. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about your shadow, which are deeply rooted unconscious elements of who you are that have seeped their ways through layers of consciousness to where it creates a behavior that you are unaware of. Right? It's called your shadow. It's the primal animalistic side of who you are that you don't have a direct relationship with because it's part of unconsciousness, hence the dream state. The only way to enter this unconscious void is the dream state. The subconscious, to a degree, is integration of both. It's fragments seeping from the unconscious, trying to make its way towards consciousness. And so subconscious becomes subliminary acts, actions, responses, or cues. That's why we subconsciously do things, is because fragments of this deep void of the unconscious have tried to make its way through. The idea of the shadow is just that it's fragments of something that you can't directly explore. It's not the most wicked parts of you, but it's the parts of you that you don't even know exist that are responsible for why you behave, we'll just use this term, negatively. Why you embody the negative portion of the atom as opposed to the positive portion of the atom, right? A lot of people try to suppress their shadow, conquer it, beat it into submission, and rule over it, have dominion over it. And they notice and they wonder why they're in this constant back and forth with their shadow. The shadow is you. It's the darkest parts of you. It's the most hurt parts of you that have felt the most pain, that have seen the worst and have thought the worst, that have imagined the worst. It's the parts of you that don't see the world as good, but evil, wicked, danger, pain, agony, misery, distraught. It's the nihilistic part of you that doesn't care for meaning, doesn't care for love, nurture, care. You don't fight this part of you and beat it into submission by brute force. You run towards it, give it a big hug, and that part of you, and again, it's not an actual part of you, like physically, but it's a psychological part of you where you hug it. And hugging is, well, it's symbolic of, I accept you. Everything's okay. I'm not afraid of you. You're not ugly to me. You are me. And I am you. You hug it and you say, well, we've been through a lot. It's been tough for us this far. I mean, look at our life. I don't even know how we survived. But we did it somehow, me and you. And you got a lot of pain. But the world isn't too bad. I can't have you live over me now. I hope that you're okay with just being where you are, the shadow. I need to live over you now. That's how you conquer your demons. You don't demolish them. You just learn to live above them. Your shadow and your inner child full of hurt is the same way. You don't destroy, eradicate, hold a shotgun to the inner child and shadow and go boom and try to just erase it from existence. You just say, it's okay now. It's okay. No more fighting. I feel your pain. It's been tough for us. But just let me take care of it now, right? You have this conversation with that part of you. You say we because that's you. It's just the hurt, it's the pain, it's everything dark about you that has just built up and compounded over a very long period of time. So if we want to connect with our inner child, we need to recognize and acknowledge the inner child, right? Close your eyes, imagine yourself as a kid, visualize what you looked like, how you felt, and what you needed most. You can journal, help some people. I mean, what was the happiest memory as a child? What was the saddest? What was the most traumatic? When did you feel the most hurt or misunderstood? Revisit it. It's painful. It's like, oh, you get goosebumps just going back to that moment. But you have to analyze that. Like, how did you feel? I used to get goosebumps just revisiting experiences and memories in my life. It would be so difficult. My gosh, I couldn't even stand the pain. It was so tough. It was unbearable. But in doing so, constantly recalling it and revisiting it and bringing it into memory, something that I've tried to lock away and hide and just forget about, that was when I was able to say, yeah, that's a world of hurt. Damn, how did I survive? It kind of became this humorous thing where I'm like, I survived that? Damn, I can survive anything, right? It became a little humorous to me. And to a degree, I like to make jokes of trauma because it's part of like my healing method. I'm like, damn, my father did that. Oh my gosh. Hope I don't do that to my kids. So it becomes this methodology to where you attack trauma from a different angle. Instead of through deep analysis and diagnostics and regressing it down, you just say, well, damn, laugh about it. Not in a delusional way, but say, I'm laughing about it now because I am okay that it's happened. I'm not in pain anymore. The memory is sad that I had to go through that, but I'm not in pain, right? Identify your wounds, your triggers. Pay attention to moments where you feel overly reactive or emotional. Ask yourself, when have I felt this before? What does this remind me of? Why am I triggered? Why are my emotions at an all-time high right now? Why? An example, well, if criticism makes you shut down, it's probably linked to something. Judgment in your adolescence. Have dialogue with your inner child. Speak to that inner child. Write a letter to your inner child. Just do it. Like, hey, Thompson, I'm 24 now and you're still young. Boom, boom, boom. And it's almost like you're sending an email to younger you. Imagine your inner child actually responding. What would they say to that email, right? I would say something along the lines of, if I'm writing to my inner child, I'd say, hey, Thompson, you're young. We're 24 right now. Yeah, we made it this far. By the way, you're not too bad, man. I know you're heavily insecure and you feel unworthy and you feel like your life has piled up to nothing. But hey, you made it far enough and you only have growth. I mean, I'm 24 right now. I'm still young. I have no idea what to experience. And so will you. It's tough right now. I know with mom and dad, it's tough. And you don't really have anyone around and you have no friends. And so you need to have imaginary friends and you keep making paper airplanes and you keep throwing it at a wall because that's the only thing that makes you feel joy. And you always love having people over at the house because you don't want to be alone because being alone is so boring to you and you're so sick of it. And you try to make friends to hang out with and you try to stay after school. But you're going to be okay. And then I'd immediately switch it and I would imagine I'm young and I'm reading this. I would say something along the lines of, does it ever get better? What about mom and dad? What about me? Do I do something? Like, what am I supposed to do? And I would just have this constant back and forth, which helps me really understand that neglected part of who I was as an adolescent, right? Which kind of goes hand in hand with healing your inner child. You can reparent yourself. Reparenting is about giving your inner child what they needed, but they didn't get. Love, validation, safety. Give it to them. They need it. So give it to yourself. Now, I have kind of a rule with this, which is don't do it in a delusional way. Let's say you are literally the worst version of yourself. Only give it to yourself when you deserve it. If you're the worst version of yourself right now and you need this love and validation and safety that you didn't get in order for you to change, that's a different story. Cool, do that. But let's just say you're the worst version of yourself and you want to give yourself the love and validation and safety. If you do it in a delusional way, you're basically saying it's okay to stay the same. Don't change. This is all you need. And I don't really enjoy that because I've been there before. I was the worst version of myself. I would look in the mirror and I'd say, well, hey, despite you being the worst version of yourself, I love you, Thompson. You're such a cool guy, such a good man. No, I wasn't. I was literally the worst human on earth. I did some of the most disgusting things to the most beautiful people, and I just wish I could have done better. They'll always remember me as that person who did that. They'll never see anything else. And I just wish I could have done better. And nothing about me being accepting of myself and loving myself at the time directly helped me. I wish I would have did this instead. I wish I would have looked in the mirror and said, you deserve love, Thompson. You deserve a lot. But right now, not yet, because look at you. So how about we make a deal? As you take steps to change, I will in turn give you what it is that you've been looking for. I wish I had that transactional relationship with myself as opposed to this relational relationship with myself. Because had I done the transaction early, I would have taken steps to become better, and in doing so, felt worthy and deserving of whatever it is I was deprived of, as opposed to being completely unworthy and not deserving, but still giving myself something that I'm not deserving of, which created an animal. You can speak kindly to yourself, that's fine. I don't. And it's not necessarily because I had people speak unkindly to me growing up. It's because I've tried both. I've tried speaking kindly to myself, and I tried being very mean to myself. Being kind only made me complacent and stagnate. Being a little mean to myself woke me up to the realities that I'm not exactly the best version of myself right now. And so there's more that I have to do, because my future family depends on the best version of me to uplift them, hold it down, be the beacon of hope, the pillar of strength. So I'm going to do it for them. You can also protect yourself. I mean, protection is a form of self-love. It's saying, I'm just not going to allow that to happen, which is cool. You set up rules, you set up barriers. Not barriers so that people can't come in, barriers so that you just avoid BS, which is cool. I like it. I like that. All right. Practicing self-compassion also goes hand in hand with this. And again, if you're really hell-bent on being compassionate towards yourself, and you need to, in order for you to take action and in order for you to take the first steps to change, cool, do it. But if you know you're the type of person where if you are compassionate, if you are accepting of yourself, but you don't change, I'd say try doing what I wish I would have done, which is be transactional with yourself. Say, hey, you're going through a tough time right now. You want to feel loved, you want to feel worthy, you want to feel deserving, you want to have purpose. I'm not going to give this to you because you're not deserving of it. Let's do this, 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 and then in doing so, will you get this, this, and this? I wish I would have done that to myself, because I would have been a lot farther. The process would have been a lot quicker, a lot smoother. I would have been able to work more effectively. Revisiting childhood joys is something that's pretty cool. It helps mainly because when you reconnect with activities you loved as a child, it can kind of help you rediscover a part of you that's been missing. I don't really know if I had too much joys. I just know that I made paper airplanes a lot growing up. I had no friends, so I would talk to just the wall, throw paper airplanes at the wall, and I spent a lot of time on the computers. But I spent so much time on these video games where just the other week I was listening to like the soundtrack from the video games, and the amount of nostalgia I got was just incredible. I look back and nothing about my childhood was agony or despair. You look back and what you get is this positive reinforcement loop that, hey, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. All the things that happened to me, all the things I saw, all the things I heard, I just listened to that video game soundtrack and I said, wow, look at those moments. A lot of my childhood was escaping. I escaped through drugs, through alcohol, through video games. Not sports or anything like that. I mean, hey, my father didn't put me through anything like that. My father was always on the computer because he just liked messing around with computers, and I ended up picking that up from him, right? Which is why it's really important, especially if you're a parent, be very mindful. You have no idea how much your kids see. You have no idea how much your kids are observing and understanding. Don't assume that they're completely ignorant. Everything you say, everything you do, everything you speak about, every time you walk, they are watching. And they're soaking in because they're trying to devise some coherent understanding of whatever this world is. They have no freaking clue what this is. All right? So now, let's talk about some of the benefits. I mean, if you end up healing your emotional inner child, you get a little bit of emotional freedom. This backpack that you've been carrying your entire life, you can let go of it. You're free. No more heavy weight on your shoulders. It's like, damn, I am okay. We are okay. You let go of old wounds, you free yourself, and you rid yourself of fear, doubt, resentment towards people, and you regain the very thing that you've lost, which is power. Your whole life, it's been blaming your family, your father, your uncle for touching you, your mother for screaming at you, your sister, your brother, all this. And yes, you have every reason to blame them. And it was terrible. I'm so sorry you went through that, but that didn't help. You need to regain this power. So it's, yes, I went through this, but no more will I allow my uncle, my brother, my sister, this and this and this to be the reason why I am unable to change. Right now, I put my foot down and I will change despite what has happened to me. And that right there is the strongest form of love that you can give to yourself, which is regaining power. No more blaming the world. No more blaming your lack of resources. No more blaming your parents. No more blaming what you went through, but just acknowledging what you went through and saying, that has created this person and I can still change. Now, I mean, when you do that, when you heal, I mean, you can improve relationships. There were so many relationships that were just destroyed because I couldn't heal that part of me. Someone else had to be that person that had to deal with a broken little boy. And that was awful. I wish I would have changed a little bit sooner. I wish I would have understood myself just a little bit sooner so that the people that I cared for didn't have to deal with that burden. It's my burden for me to bear, for me to solve, for me to conquer, for me to love, for me to win over, to me to live above, not for me to just extend to everybody else. And in doing so, it's fascinating because you rediscover the meaning of life and joy. Everything that was once dark, you see now as beautiful. Everything that was once misery, you see now as delight and just it's just joyful. Tranquility, bliss is the source of your imagination, your curiosity, your playfulness. It's the thing that makes you just free. In a world full of X's and Y's, and you have to do this, and you must do this, and you must be here at a certain time, and you got to do this, and you're in this constant rat race, you enter a part of yourself that just doesn't take things so seriously, and you're just free. And then you get hit with the revelation that, wow, maybe this is life, right? So again, your inner child, hey, carries both joy and pain. Healing starts with acknowledgement. The process frees you in a much more authentic way, and it creates a more authentic life. It's a journey, not a destination. You're going to do it all the years of your life. You don't heal it and you don't heal your inner child and just become good. You heal your inner child and you enhance the level of understanding. And you will continue to enhance this level of understanding. It takes a lot of courage to face the past. A lot. Because the past is shameful, full of guilt, regret, agony. And so it takes a lot of courage to revisit that. If I told you, walk through those doors and you will feel pain, regret, shame, you'll be like, no, I'm good. I'll go. Where's the door that's happy? Right? So revisiting the past is something that we actually avoid, but there's strength in it. And so long as you don't die, you will be just fine. So long as you continue to draw breath, you will be A-okay. The peace and the freedom that you'll feel and that you'll find on the other side is a lot. It's worth it, 100%. So take the first step. If this resonated with you, hey, spend 5 minutes just to think about your painful past. Think about all the people that hurt you, the moments where you just wanted to run away and disappear. Start your journey. You're going to have to eventually. Don't let your future wife or your future husband or your daughter or your son have to deal with the burden of your unsolved problems that are lying dormant. Do it for them, not for you. If you can't do it for you, do it for them. Because your husband will feel the weight of it. Your wife will feel the weight of it. Your son and your daughter will be deeply impacted by it. Solve the problems before you leave a mark in somebody that cannot be removed. That's the ripple effect. Every action, every decision, everything that we do leaves a ripple effect that bleeds into eternity that we cannot foresee. We cannot imagine how deep it bleeds. We just know that for every action, there is a reaction. Cause and effect. Inner child. Don't beat your inner child into submission. Nurture it. Love it. Be patient with it. It's you. Be kind. And in doing so, You will free yourself of all the pain. Good luck. That's all I got.